For those of you who are listening at home, if you have your New Testament with you, open the book of Luke. Or if you're making notes, I will tell you where to find the references which I will now make in this homiletic reflection. When you look at all four Gospels, each one will give you a variation, a different interpretation of God revealed in Jesus Christ. The Gospel of Mark, which was the earliest of the four Gospels, tells us about a strong, convicted, decisive miracle worker, a firm character. That's the Jesus appears in the Gospel of Mark. And therefore, the icon for the Gospel of Mark is a winged lion, indicating the firmness, the strength, the character, determination of Jesus as he is portrayed for us in God's revealed word in the Gospel of Mark. Now, Matthew is different. Matthew is a Jewish gospel. Matthew shaped his gospel for a Jewish church. The first followers of Jesus were Jewish. And therefore, you'll find many references to the Old Testament. He is the fulfillment of all that was said and predicted and prophesied in the Old Testament. That's the basic statement of the Gospel of Matthew, the fulfillment of all that was promised in the Hebrew Scriptures. John's Gospel also is quite different. John emphasizes Jesus' divinity. He spends very little time speaking about the humanity of Jesus. And the Gospel of John, the language is very deep and cryptic and has second-level meanings. Begins, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God. It's kind of elusive language. He doesn't speak about miracles. In the Gospel of John, he speaks about signs. There are 7 signs in the Gospel of John. Now, Luke is quite different. So let me look at Luke, since the text of today's Gospel is taken from the book of Luke. So let's look at the Gospel of Luke and begin to shape together the portrait of Jesus, God revealing to us in the Jesus of Luke's Gospel. In the Gospel of Luke, we are told about Mary and Joseph going to Bethlehem for the birth of Christ. And Luke, as the only one, tells us there was no room in the inn. Therefore, at the beginning, they were homeless in Bethlehem. That's worth remembering. And the birth of Jesus happens there in Bethlehem in a stable. And shepherds come to visit Jesus. Not the Magi, not the supreme ones, but humble, pejorative shepherds. In the Gospel of Luke, they are the ones that come to visit Jesus. We move on to chapter 4 in the Gospel of Luke. Jesus goes to his hometown of Nazareth, goes into the synagogue, and stands up and reads from the prophet Isaiah. And this is his mission statement. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me. I've come to bring good tidings to the poor, to set prisoners free, to give sight to the blind, to declare a year of favor from the Lord, a year of forgiveness, a year of reconciliation. That's the mission statement of Jesus. And he is rejected in Nazareth. Goes through this profound experience of rejection. He leaves Nazareth, goes to Capernaum, and there is no indication in Luke's Gospel that he will ever go back to Nazareth again. That's chapter 4. Move on in the Gospel of Luke and you get to chapter 10. Remember the story of the Good Samaritan. Jesus tells the story. And it's about a Samaritan reaching out to somebody who was wounded. Goes out of his way to take care of a person who is wounded and in need. Chapter 15 in the Gospel of Luke has the prodigal son. Remember the prodigal son? this reckless, riotous young man who rebels against everything, squanders in his inheritance, and then he comes home and his father unconditionally welcomes him, blesses him, restores him, forgives him, and never asks him to pay back what he has squandered. Chapter 15. Keep moving. Chapter 17 is what we have with the 10 lepers today. And Jesus sees them. Now, that's not just seeing with his eyes. He sees their pain, their struggle. He sees that they're marginalized, they're shut out, and he reconciles them and heals them. Chapter 17. Chapter 18 in the Gospel of Luke has this very interesting story that you will remember. It tells a story about a Pharisee and a tax collector that go up to the temple to pray. The Pharisee stands up front and says, I go to the 9:30 Mass every Sunday. I use the envelopes. I'm a member of the pastoral council. I'm a leader in the parish. I work the fiesta. I work all that. Oh, and then a poor tax collector stands at the back and said, be merciful to me, O Lord, for I am a sinner. And Jesus says the tax collector was preferred over the Pharisee. Chapter 19 in Luke's Gospel has a story about this reviled tax collector in Jericho, a fellow named Zacchaeus, a thief, an unjust man, a greedy person. Jesus goes to his home to have a meal, and he goes through a conversion, Zacchaeus. And then finally, read on, chapter 23. All of these stories only appear in Luke. Chapter 23, Jesus forgives the soldiers who are crucifying him, only in Luke. And finally in Luke, the criminal who is crucified with him says to Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And Jesus says, this day you will be with me in paradise. The compassionate, forgiving, embracing, welcoming Jesus for all people, especially people who are broken. There is no indication in any of these stories that those who were blessed earned it. There's no indication they merited anything. It was free gift from the Lord. And therefore, it will teach us that the meeting place between Jesus and this person who is seeking is a time of crisis. So wherever you are in your life, you're dealing with loneliness, rejection. Have you had great failure in your life? Are you weighed down with a heavy burden of sin in your life? Perhaps all your expectations weren't fulfilled. You're disappointed in your life. Maybe you're carrying the burden of sickness, something that changed your life. Or perhaps somebody close to you has died, and you're in grief. In the Gospel of Luke, these are the moments when Jesus touches your life. It's not just knowing about Jesus. It's to experience the person of Jesus, to belong to the moment. And the moment in which Jesus, in the Gospel of Luke, will meet you is in your moment of confusion, when you feel lost, you're in darkness, you're struggling, you're questioning, you're doubting. This is where you meet the Jesus of the Gospel of Luke. And these are all the examples, and they appear only in the Gospel of Luke. I know about this in my own life. I've had enough darkness and sin and failure in my own life to fall in love with the Jesus of Luke's Gospel. That's the gift to us. That's the teaching. It's God revealing. It's God touching our lives in moments of crisis, Not moments of glory, or not moments when we have all the answers, where prosperity reigns and all is well. In the Gospel of Luke, the meeting place with Jesus Christ is in a time of crisis, burden, reversal, difficulty, pain, suffering, whatever it is. That's where you meet Jesus Christ, in the Gospel of Luke. What does this mean to the church? I once belonged to a church when I was very young, the Holy Roman Catholic Church, beyond reproach, the last word, unquestioned supremacy. That was my church when I was young. And then it changed. When I was ordained a priest in 1964, the Vatican Council was just finished in 1965. And with many, many renewals in the church, a fundamental was the primacy of conscience. Major document in the church. 1968 came Humanae Vitae, which caused untold pain, suffering, and confusion amongst the faithful. Change was happening. All in the last 50 years. Then 25, 30 years ago, you have the clergy abuse thing, which emerged and is still there. Another wound in the church. And all of a sudden, we're dealing with a church that's not supreme, not beyond reproach, but a wounded, broken church. A church in need of forgiveness. A church in need of healing, where prayer and faith have to be renewed. We belong to a human church, not something beyond reproach, not the supreme last word. When I was young, an interfaith marriage was considered highly exceptional and really discouraged. I wasn't allowed to go into a Protestant church. I mean, just to go in, to look around. No, you're not allowed to go in. And we changed. We changed to a wounded church, to a broken church. And we found that in the sacrament of reconciliation, only the sinner can be a confessor. Only the one who has known forgiveness can begin to speak about forgiveness in the sacrament of reconciliation. Not the perfect priest. It's foolishness. God, it's unreal. So now, what do we learn from the Gospel of Luke? The Luke and Jesus touches us with healing, with forgiveness, unmerited grace, with blessing, with a familiarity, a touch, a closeness, a bond, a familiarity. So that wherever you are in your life, we now are a church that not only preaches forgiveness, but needs forgiveness. And wherever you are in your life, most likely, you now have a place, a moment, an opportunity, a venue to meet the person of Jesus Christ revealed to us in the Gospel of Luke. Amen.